Okay, so in today's lecture, we will be discussing about the Mauryan Empire. Okay, Mauryan Empire. So, it was founded by Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya, basically before them, there was Alexander's invasion in the northwestern areas of the subcontinent. So, Alexander's invasion kind of facilitated the expansion of Mauryan Empire, because once Alexander came, he destroyed all the small kingdoms in that region. Okay, before we start, I need to give you a background. So, and also it was founded by. Now we come to Mauryan Empire. Mauryan dynasty was founded by Chandragupta Maurya. He had the help of Kautilya. Okay, Kautilya. Kautilya is a strategist. Okay, he helped him to found the Mauryan dynasty. Okay, who seems to belong to some ordinary family. Actually, Kautilya adopted Chandragupta Maurya at a young age, and he trained him how to be a king. Okay, it is said that there was a time when Kautilya was actually walking around. He saw a kid actually judging other children of his same age. So he got that Chandragupta Maurya had a skill in judgment or in ruling people. So he trained him. Okay, according to Brahminical tradition, he was born a Mura or a Sudra, or to a Sudra woman in the court of Nandas. Okay, but an earlier Buddhist tradition speaks of the existence of a Kshatriya clan called Mauryas lying in the region of Gorakhpur adjoining to the Nepalese Terai. Okay, in all likelihood, Chandragupta was a member of this clan. He took advantage of the growing weakness and unpopularity of Nandas. Actually, Kautilya challenged the Nanda king, okay, that he will topple his rule, and that's how he meets Chandragupta Maurya. And with a popular rebellion, they are coming into the picture. Okay, in the last days of his rule, with the help of Chanakya or Kautilya is same as Chanakya. Okay, he overthrew the Nandas and established the rule of Mauryan dynasty. Justin, a Greek writer, says that Chandragupta overran the whole of India with an army of 6 lakh. This may or may not be true, but Chandragupta liberated northwestern India from the threshold of Seleucus. Seleucus was a governor appointed by, or a viceroy, Greek viceroy by who? Alexander. Okay, Chandragupta seems to be have come out victorious. Eventually, he marries his daughter, Seleucus' daughter, Helena. Okay, that all are there. Eventually, peace was concluded between the two in return for 500 elephants. Seleucus gave him eastern Afghanistan, Balochistan, and the area west of Indus. Chandragupta thus built a vast empire, which indeed not only Bihar and good included not only Bihar and good portions of Orissa and Bengal, but also western and northwestern India and the Deccan, leaving Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and parts of northeastern India. Okay, anyway, we will discuss the Mauryan Empire extent and all in the art and culture. So, I will give a brief introduction then also that time. Just now, we need to read only the fact that are given in the history textbook. Okay. The Mauryas ruled over whole of subcontinent. In the northwest. They held sway over certain areas which were not included even in the British Empire. Okay, Imperial Organization. The Mauryas organized a very elaborate system of administration. We know about it from the accounts of Megasthenes. Megasthenes was a Greek ambassador sent by Seleucus to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. He lived in Maurya capital. Maurya's capital was Patliputra, and wrote an account not only of the administration of the city of Patliputra, but also the Mauryan Empire as a whole. The account of Megasthenes does not survive in full, but quotations occur in works of several Greek subsequent writers. These fragments have been collected and published in the form of a book which throws to the valuable light of the administration, society, and economy of Mauryan times. Actually, we get lot of information about the Chandragupta or Mauryan Empire from the Greek accounts rather than the Indian accounts. Okay, the account of Megasthenes can be supplemented by Arthashastra. Arthashastra is a very good reference from the Indian perspective of Kautilya. Okay, although the Arthashastra was finally compiled a few centuries after the Mauryan rule, some of its books contain material that is genuine and gives authentic information about the Mauryan administration and economy. Okay, on the basis of these two sources, we draw a picture of the administrative system of Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya was evidently an autocrat who concentrated all power in his hands. Okay, he's a authoritarian or kind of you can say was a strong ruler. If we believe a statement of Arthashastra, the king had set a high deal. He stated that in the happiness of his subjects lay his happiness and their troubles lay his troubles. Okay, he was concerned with the people also. But we do not know how far the king acted upon these norms. According to Megasthenes, the king was assisted by a council of whose members was noted for wisdom. Okay, there was a council who guided him. There is nothing to show to their advice was binding to the king. Maybe they gave only recommendations to the king. The empire was divided into a number of provinces, and each province was placed under a prince who was a scion of royal dynasty. The provinces were divided into still smaller units. We know from excavations that a large number of towns belong to Mauryan times. Okay, all these are not that much important, but we will see the Mauryan army and all. In addition to these officers, the central government maintained 24 departments of the state, which controlled social and economic activities, at least in the areas which were near capital. The most striking feature of Chandragupta's administration is the maintenance of a huge army. Okay, whenever a question is asked about what is the difference between Chandragupta Maurya's administration and Ashoka, if a question is asked that under Chandragupta Maurya there was a huge army, according to the account of Roman writer called Pliny. Chandragupta maintained 6 lakh foot soldiers, 30,000 cavalry, and 9,000 elephants. Another source tells that Mauryas maintained 8,000 chariots. In addition to this, it seems that the Mauryas also maintained a navy. There was a naval force also. The administration of the armed forces, according to Megasthenes, was carried on by a board of 30 officers divided into 6 committees. Each committee consisting of 5 members. So, what were the 6 committees? The army, the cavalry, the elephants, chariot, navy, and transport, where each assigned the care of separate committee. All this was done by the mastermind behind all this thing was Kautilya or Chanakya. Okay, how did Chandragupta Maurya manage to meet the expenses? So there is a vast or a huge army. How can he manage all this? If we rely on Arthashastra of Kautilya, it would appear that the state controlled almost all the economic activities in the country. The state brought new land under cultivation with the help of cultivators and Shudra laborers. The virgin land, which was open to cultivation, yielded handsome income to the state in the form of revenue collected from the newly settled peasants. It seems that taxes collected from peasants varied from 1/4 to 1/6 of the produce. Okay, those who were provided with the irrigation facilities by the state had to pay for it. In addition to this, in times of emergency, peasants were compelled to raise more crops. Tolls were levied on commodities brought to town for sale, and they were collected at the gates. Moreover, the state enjoyed a monopoly in mining. Mining was a sale of liquor, manufacture of arms, etc. This naturally brought money to the royal treasury. Okay, Chandragupta thus established a well-organized administrative system and gave it a sound financial base. Okay, now we come to Ashoka. Chandragupta Maurya was succeeded by Bindusara, whose reign is important for continuing links with the Greek princes. His son Ashoka was the son of Bindusara. Okay, he is the greatest of the Mauryan rulers. According to the Buddhist tradition, he was so cruel in his early life that he killed 99 brothers to get the throne. But since the statement is based on a legend, it may well be wrong. His biography prepared by Buddhist writers, is full of fiction. And now Ashokan edicts. Ashokan edicts are very important. Okay, we reconstruct the history of Ashoka on the basis of his inscriptions. He is the first Indian king to speak directly to the people through his inscriptions. They were engraved on rocks, on polished stone pillars mounted by capitals and caves. Okay, we will look into the inscriptions and pillars of Ashoka when we discuss art and culture. They are found out only in the Indian subcontinent, but also in Kandahar. Not only in Indian subcontinent, but also in Kandahar in Afghanistan. Okay, it was found out in Afghanistan also. These inscriptions were in the form of 44 royal orders, and each royal order has several copies. The inscriptions were composed of Prakrit language and written on Brahmi script. Language is Prakrit and the script was Brahmi. Throughout the greater part of the empire, in the northwest, but in the northern west, they appear Khoreshti script and Kandahar in Afghanistan written in Aramic, in Greek script and Greek language. Okay, Khoreshti was in Kandahar. Northwestern appear in Khoreshti script and in Kandahar they were written in Aramic. Greek script Greek script, but it was in the language was Arabic, but the script was Greek, and also Greek language was also used. Okay, impact of Kalinga War. The ideology of Buddhism guided Ashoka's state policy at home and abroad. After his ascension to the throne, Ashoka fought only one major war called Kalinga War. Ashoka is not known as a conqueror or a warmonger. He is known for actually his Dhamma. Okay. So, according to him, 1 lakh people were killed in this war and 1,50,000 people were taken as prisoners. The war brought to the Brahmana priest and the Buddhist monks great suffering, which caused Ashoka much grief and remorse. So he abandoned the policy of physical occupation in favor of policy of cultural conquest. In other words, Brigosha was replaced by Dhammagosha. Okay, Brigosha is physical occupation. Dhammagosha was the concept of Dhamma, was the policy of cultural conquest. Okay, and when he had been consecrated 8 years, the beloved of the gods, the king Piyadasi conquered Kalinga. Piyadasi literally means Ashoka only. 150,000 people were deported and 100,000 were killed. Afterwards, now that Kalinga was annexed, it is actually a writing of what was the Kalinga, okay, war about. Just read through it. Ashoka now made an ideological appeal towards tribal people and the frontier kingdoms. The subjects of the independent states in Kalinga were asked to obey the king as their father and to repose confidence in him. How was it ascribed? It was the king was shown as a fatherly figure. Okay, the officials appointed by Ashoka were instructed to propagate his idea among all sections of the subjects. Okay, the tribal peoples were similarly asked to follow the principles of Dhamma. Ashoka no longer treated foreign dominions as legitimate areas of military conquest. He tried to conquer them ideologically. He took steps for the welfare of men and animals in foreign lands, which was a new thing considering the condition of those days. He sent ambassadors of peace to the Greek kingdoms in the western subcontinent, Western Asia and Greece. Okay, all this can be seen in the basis of Ashoka's inscriptions. Okay, before that, we go to the map. This is the empire of Ashoka. Okay, anyway, when we discuss about art and culture, a better map I will show you. So that will be more reliable than this is an old textbook. So, but there are many details given in this textbook. That's why I chose R.S. Sharma. Okay. If we rely on the Buddhist tradition, it would appear that he sent missionaries for the propagation of Buddhism to Sri Lanka and Central Asia. As an enlightened ruler, Ashoka tried to enlarge his area of political influence through propaganda. It would be wrong to think that Kalinga war made Ashoka an extreme pacifist. So, whenever a question is asked, do you think that Ashoka is a pacifist? Okay, he did not pursue the policy. He did not pursue the policy of consolidating his empire. He retained Kalinga after its conquest and incorporated into its empire. There is also nothing to show that he disbanded the huge army maintained from time to time by Chandragupta Maurya, time of Chandragupta Maurya. Although he repeatedly asked the tribal people to follow the policy of Dharma, he threatened them if they violated the established rules of social order and righteousness, that is Dharma. Within the empire, what happened? Within the empire, he appointed a class of officers known as Rajukas, who were vested to the authority to not only rewarding people but also punishing them. So, whenever any tribal people defied the orders of Ashoka, the Rajukas or the officers appointed by him, they will punish them. Okay, the policy of Ashoka to consolidate the empire through Dharma bore fruit. Kandahar inscription speaks of the success of his policy with hunters and fishermen who gave up killing animals and possibly took to a settled agricultural life. Okay, this is an inscription. So inscription, another important thing is that this is when Deva Nama Priya Priyadasi. Okay, this means this is actually referring to Ashoka. Okay, Deva Nama Priya Priyadasi. So this has been asked in the prelims. So just know about it. Okay. Brahmi inscriptions of the 2nd and 1st centuries have been found in Sri Lanka. Ashoka set a high ideal of himself, and this was the ideal of paternal kinship. That fatherly figure was shown. The king is assumed as a father to his people. He repeatedly asked his followers to tell the subjects that the king looked upon them as his children. As agents of the king, the officials were also asked to take care of the people. Ashoka appointed Dharma Mahamantras for propagating Dharma among various social groups, including women. He also appointed Rajugas for the administration of justice in his empire. Okay. He disapproved of rituals, especially those observed by women. He forbade killing of certain birds and animals and completely prohibited the slaughter of animals in the capital. He interrogated gay social functions. Gay here means joy or happy social functions in which people indulged in revelries or amusement or celebrations. Okay. But Ashoka's Dharma was not a narrow Dharma. It cannot be regarded as a sectarian faith. Okay. It was actually an ideology, not a religion. Its broad objective was to preserve the social order. It ordained that people should obey their parents, pay respect to the Brahmanas, the Buddhist monks, and show mercy to slaves and servants. These instructions can be found in both Buddhist and Brahminical text. So, whenever a question comes about what was Ashoka's Dharma about, then we can add these points. Okay. Ashoka taught people to live and let live. He emphasized compassion towards animals and proper behavior towards relatives. His teachings were meant to strengthen the institution of family and existing social club. He held that if the people behaved well, they would attain heaven. He never said that they would attain nirvana, which was the goal of Buddhist teachings. Ashoka's teachings were thus intended to maintain existing social order on the basis of tolerance. He does not seem to have preached any sectarian faith. Okay. Ashoka's place in history. So, how important is Ashoka in the historical concept? It is said that Pacific policy of Ashoka ruined the Mauryan Empire. But this is not true. On the contrary, Ashoka has a number of achievements to his credit. He was certainly the greatest missionary ruler in the history of the ancient world. He worked with great zeal and devotion to his mission and achieved a lot both at home and abroad. Ashoka brought about political unification of the country. He bound it further by one dharma, one language, and practically one script. This is called Brahmi script. Okay, which was used in most of his inscriptions. In unifying the country, he respected such script as Brahmi, Koroshti, Aramic, and Greek. Evidently, he also accommodated such languages as Greek, Prakrit, and Sanskrit, and various religious sects. Ashoka followed a tolerant religious policy. He did not try to force his Buddhist faith on his subjects. On the other hand, he made gifts to non-Buddhist and even anti-Buddhist sects. So Ashoka was fired with zeal of missionary activities. He deputed officials in the far-flung parts of the empire. This helped the cause of administration and also promoted cultural contacts between the developed Gangetic basin and the backward distant provinces. The material culture, typical of the heart of the empire, spread to Kalinga and Lower Deccan and northern Bengal. Above all, Ashoka is important in history for his policy of peace, non-aggression, and cultural conquest. He had no model in early Indian history for pursuing such a policy, nor did such an example exist in any country except Egypt, where Akhenaten had pursued a Pacific policy in the 14th century BC. But it is obvious that Ashoka was not aware of this Egyptian predecessor. Although Kautilya advised the king to be always intent on physical conquest, Ashoka followed just the reverse policy. He asked his successors to give up the policy of conquest and aggression, which had been followed by the Magadhian princes like till the Kalinga War. He counseled them to adopt policy of peace, which was badly needed for a period of aggressive wars lasting for 2 centuries. Ashoka consistently stuck to his policy. Although he possessed sufficient resources and certainly maintained a huge army, he did not wage any war after the conquest of Kalinga. In this sense, Ashoka was certainly far ahead of his day and generation. However, Ashoka's policy did not make any lasting impression on his viceroys and vassals, who declared themselves independent in their respective areas after the retirement of the king in 232 BC. Similarly, the policy could not convert his neighbors who swooped on the northwestern frontier of his empire within 25 years of Ashoka's exit from power in 232 BC. So, we will be discussing about who were the neighbors who came into India after Ashoka's demise. Okay, and also we will be looking into the contributions of the Mauryan Empire. Okay, now, so what was the significance of Mauryan rule? So, we will look into each one of these aspects. First one is state control. The Brahminical law books again and again stressed about the king should be guided by laws laid down in the Dharma Shastras and by the customs prevalent in the country. Kautilya advises the king to promulgate Dharma when the social order based on Varnas and Ashramas perishes. The king is called by him Dharma Pravartaka. So, who is called Dharma Pravartaka? The king. Okay, the promulger of the social order. That the royal orders were superior to other orders was asserted by Ashoka in his inscriptions. Ashoka promulgated Dharma and appointed officials to inculcate and enforce its essentials throughout the country. Assertion of royal absolutism was a natural culmination of the policy of military conquest adopted by the princes of Magadha. So, we will be discussing, I have not taken the Mahajanapadas. So, once the Mahajanapadas lecture is done, you will be able to understand it. Anyway, I will be putting it in that order only in the playlist. So, no need to worry. So, since the cultural aspect is there in the Mauryan aspect, so I am doing it in an early stage. Okay. Magadha, Anga, Vaisali. So, these are the Mahajanapadas. Okay, were annexed by the Magadhan. Out of the Mahajanapadas, there were several Mahajanapadas. Okay, in the initial years before Mauryan Empire. So, what happened? One single empire or Mahajanapada conquered rest of the Mahajanapadas, and that is Magadhan Empire. Okay, the military control over these areas eventually turned to coercive control of all aspects of life of the people. Magadha possessed the request power of sword to enforce its overall control. Okay. In order to control all spheres of life, the state had to maintain a vast bureaucracy. In no other period of ancient history, we hear of so many officers as in Mauryan times. The administrative mechanism was backed by an elaborate system of espionage. Various types of spies collected intelligence about foreign enemies and kept an eye on numerous officers. They also helped the collection of money from credulous people through the deliberate resort of superstitious practices. Important functionaries called trithas. It seems that the most functionaries were paid in cash. The highest functionaries were minister or mantri, high priest, that is Purohita, commander-in-chief Senapati, crown prince Yuvaraja, who were paid generously as much as 48,000 panas. Pana being a silver coin equal to 1/4 of a tola. Okay, in sharp contrast to them, the lowest officers were given 60 panas. Okay, 48,000 panas were given to the highest people, and also the lowest officers were given only 60 panas. In consolidated pay, although some employees were given as little as 10 to 20 panas. Okay, therefore, this would seem that there were enormous gaps between the highest and the lowest category of government servants. That is about the state administration. Now we come to the economic regulations. If we rely on the Arthashastra of Kautilya, it would appear that the state maintained 27 superintendents or Adhyakshas mostly to regulate the economic activities of the state. They controlled and regulated agriculture, trade and commerce, weights and measures, crafts such as weaving and spinning, mining and so on. Okay. The state also provided irrigation facilities and regulated water supply for the benefit of agriculturists. Megasthenes informs us that in the Mauryan Empire, the officer measured the land as in Egypt and inspected the channels through which water was distributed into smaller canals. If we believe Arthashastra of Kautilya, a striking social development of the Mauryan period was the employment of slaves in agricultural operations. Megasthenes states that he did not notice any slaves in India, but there is no doubt that the domestic slaves were found in India from Vedic time onwards. For the first time in Mauryan period, slaves were engaged in agricultural work on large scale in state maintained farms on which numerous slaves and hired laborers were employed. Thousand, I mean, 1,50,000 war captives brought by Ashoka from Kalinga have been engaged in agriculture. Okay, but ancient Indian society was not a slave society. What the slaves did in Greece and Rome was done by Sudras in India. The Sudras were regarded as a collective property of three higher castes. Okay, they were compelled to serve them as slaves, artisans, agricultural laborers, and domestic servants. Several reasons suggest that the royal, we can say another important contrast, that is, even though Ashoka preached about Dharma and all, there still existed the concept of caste system that was prevalent in the society. Okay, and also economic inequality was also there in the society. Okay, that were also some drawbacks when we say about Ashoka's rule. Okay, several reasons suggest that the royal control worked over a very large area, at least in the core of the empire. This was because of the strategic position of Patliputra, from where royal agents could sail up and down the four directions. Besides this, the royal road ran from Patliputra to Nepal through Vaishali and Champaran. We also hear of the road at the foothills of Himalayas. It passed from Vaishali through Champaran to Kapilavastu. These all are not important as a UPSC perspective. UPSC is not going to ask you about the roads and all. Okay, it is just saying that there were a lot of road networks that facilitated what? Facilitated trade and the transport, in which the horses may have been played an important part. So these were also engaged in enhanced the economic infrastructure of the Mauryan Empire. Further, it seems that the Mauryan rulers did not have to deal with large populations. Okay, all told, their army did not exceed 6,50,000 men. If 10% of the population was recruited, the total population would not be more than 6.5 million. Okay, Ashokan inscriptions show that the royal writ ran all over the country except the extreme east and south, but rigid state control may not have proved effective much beyond the middle Gangetic zone. Mauryan period constitute a landmark in the system of taxation in ancient India. Kautilya names many taxes to be collected from peasants, artisans and traders. Okay, there were taxes that were collected from the trading community or the peasant community. Okay, this required a strong and efficient machinery of assessment, collection and storage. The Mauryas attached great importance to the assessments rather than storage and depositing. The Samaharada, okay, was the highest officer in charge of assessment, and Samhita was the chief custodian of the Samanta was the chief custodian of the state treasury and storehouse. The harm done to the state by the first is thought to be more serious than the harm caused by the second. In fact, an elaborate machinery for assessment first appears in the Mauryan period. The list of taxes mentioned in the Arthashastra is impressive, and this were really collected, very little would be left. So the taxation system in Mauryan Empire was also very aggressive. Okay, that is also, we can say, another negative aspect. Okay, so caste system was there, social inequality was there, economic inequality was there, and also taxes collected were also huge. Okay, we have epigraphic evidence of the existence of rural storehouses which show that the taxes were collected in kind, and these granaries were meant for helping local people in times of famine, drought, etc. If it seems that the punch-marked silver coins, which carry the symbols of peacock and the hill and crescent, form the imperial currency of the Mauryas. They have been discovered in large numbers. Apparently, they contributed to the collection of taxes and payments of officers in cash. Okay. Further, because of the uniformity, the currency must have facilitated market exchange in a wider area. The Mauryas made a remarkable contribution to art and architecture. They introduced stone masonry on a wide scale. Megasthenes states that the Mauryan palace at Patliputra was what was as splendid as a capital of Iran. Okay, we will look into the images of Mauryan palace and all in the art and culture video. I'll be putting it in the comment section also. Fragments of stone pillars and stamps indicating the existence of 80 pillared hall have been discovered in Kumhar in the outskirts of modern Patna. Although this remains do not recall the magnificence mentioned by Megasthenes, they certainly attest the high technical skill attained by the Mauryan artisans in polishing the stone pillars, which was shining as northern black polish ware. It must have been a difficult task to carry huge blocks of stone from quarries and to polish and embellish them when they were placed erect. All this seems to be a great feat of engineering. Each pillar is made of single piece of sandstone. Only their capitals, which contained beautiful sculptures in the form of lions, bulls. Okay, we will discuss what is capitals and all, and base, abacus. All this aspect will be shown in art and culture video. Okay, with pillars on top. This polished pillars were set up throughout the country, which shows what shows that technical knowledge involved in their polishing and transport had spread far and wide. Mauryan artisans also started the practice of hewing out caves from rocks for monks to live. In the earliest examples are the Barabar caves at a distance of 30 km from Gaya. Later, this kind of cave architecture spread to western and southern India. Gaya caves, Barabar caves, and Nasik caves are some of the examples. Okay, spread of material culture. On the one hand, the Mauryas created for first time a well-organized state missionary. This is bull capital. Okay, this is actually currently placed in the our Rashtrapati Bhavan. Okay, operated in the heart of the empire. On the other hand, their conquest opened the doors for trading and missionary activities. Okay, it seems that the contacts established by administrators, traders, Jaina, and Buddhist monks led to the spread of the material culture of the Gangatic basin on the areas situated in the periphery of the empire. The new material culture in the Gangatic basin was based on the intensive use of iron, plenty of punch-marked coins, abundance of beautiful poetry called northern black polished ware, introduction of burned bricks and ringwells, and above all, the rise of towns in northeastern India. A Greek writer called Arrian states that it is not possible to record with accuracy the number of cities on account of their municipality. Thus, the Mauryan period witnessed rapid development of material culture in Gangatic Basin. So, Gangatic Basin was basically a developed region in the Indian subcontinent. On account of easy access to the rich iron ores of the, how did it develop? There was a easy access to rich iron ores of southern Bihar. People used more and more of iron implements. To this period belonged socketed axes, sickles, and possibly plowshare on large scale. Although arms and weapons were the monopoly of the Mauryan state, the use of other iron tools was not restricted to any class. Their use and manufacture must have spread from Gangatic basin to the distant parts of the empire. In Mauryan period, burnt bricks were also used for the first time in northeastern India. The Mauryan structures made of burnt bricks have been found in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Houses were made of both bricks and timber, which was available in plenty because of thick vegetation in ancient times. Megasthenes speaks of the wooden structures at the Mauryan capital Patliputra. Excavations show the logs of wood were also used as an important line of defense against flood and foreign invasion. The use of burned bricks spread in the outlying provinces of the empire. Because the moist climate and heavy rainfall, it was not possible to have lasting and large structures made of mud. So, mud bricks or mud structures were not constructed as we find in the dry zones. therefore, in the northeastern region. Therefore, the diffusion of the use of burned bricks proved to be a great boon, a great gift. Eventually, it led to the flowering of towns. What happened? Uh, what happened as there was a use of burned bricks, the use of mud bricks was reduced, which in turn created strong building structures that could not be destroyed by rain and all. So that led to the flowering of towns in the different parts of empire. Similarly, the ring wells, which appeared first under Mauryas in the Gangetic basin, spread beyond the heart of the empire. Since ring wells could supply water to people for domestic use, it was not imperative now to now to found settlements on the banks of rivers. They also served as soakage pits in congested settlements. The elements of Middle Gangetic material culture seem to have been transferred with modification of northern Bengal, Kalinga, Andhra, Karnataka. In Bangladesh, there we find Mahasthana inscription in Bogra. Mahasthana inscription in Bogra district in Mauryan Brahmi. Okay, we find MBP at Bagra in the Jaipur district. Okay, NBP threads about have been found at some places, such Chandragupta in 24 Paraganas in West Bengal. Okay, all these things, just read through it. Okay, about the pillars and all, I think just read through it. Although we find iron weapons and implements at several places in Andhra and Karnataka in the Mauryan period, the advance of iron technology was a contribution of megalith builders who were noted for various kinds of large stone barriers, including those of round form. But some of these places have Ashokan inscriptions as well as in BP. So few inscriptions have been found at of Mauryan times have been found at Amaravati, and Ashokan inscriptions have been found at Irangudi in Andhra. And these are just saying how much extent these inscriptions have been found. Okay, how was the vastness of the empire? Okay, the art of making steel may have been spread through Mauryan contacts in some parts of the country. Steel objects belonging to 200 BC and to an early date have been found in the Middle Gangetic basin. The spread of steel may have led to the use of better methods of cultivation in Kalinga, created conditions for the rise of Chetty kingdom. Chetty kingdom in that region. In some ways, the Satavahana Empire, which came after the Maurya, was a projection of Mauryan Empire in the Deccan. The Satavahana rulers adopted some of the administrative units of the Mauryas also. In their time, Buddhism flourished at the same manner as it did in the heart of the empire of Ashoka. Okay, the existence of inscriptions, occasional NBP, that is Northern pottery, postures, and punch-marked coins in parts of Bangladesh, Orissa, Andhra, and Karnataka from near about 300 BC shows that the Mauryan period attempts were made to spread elements of Middle Gangetic basin culture to distant areas. See, all these inscriptions and all these steel manufacturing, steel products, the iron products, all these were aimed at, or attempts were made to spread elements of Middle Gangetic basin, which is the Patliputra region basin culture into distant areas. The process seems to be in accordance of the instructions of Kautilya. Kautilya advised that new elements, new settlements should be found with the help of cultivators who were apparently Vaishyas, and with that of Shudra laborers who could be brought from overpopulated areas in order to bring the virgin soil under cultivation. The new peasants were allotted remission in tax and supplied with cattle, seeds, and money. Okay, so that is another plan, that more cultivation, more land to be brought under cultivation. How far the Mauryan towns facilitated the diffusion of the material culture of Gangetic basin in the tribal belt of central India, extending the Chota Nagpur in the east to the Vindhyas in the west, cannot be said, but it is pretty clear that Ashoka maintained intimate contacts with the tribal people who were exhorted to observe Dharma. Their contact with the Dharma Mahamantras appointed by Ashoka must have enabled them to imbibe elements of higher culture prevalent in Gangetic basin. In this sense, Ashoka launched a deliberate and systematic policy of accumulation. He states that as a result of the diffusion of Dharma men would mingle with gods. This implies that tribal and other peoples would take to the habits of a settled tax paying peasant society and develop respect for paternal power, royal authority, and for monks, priests, and officers who helped to enforce this authority. His policy succeeded. Ashoka claims that hunters and fishermen were okay. They began to practice dharma. Okay, causes for the fall of Mauryan Empire. So this is a very important topic. There are a lot of times where this has been asked. Again, we are coming to the Magadhan Empire. Magadhan Empire, which had been reared by successive wars, culminating in the conquest of Kalinga, began to disintegrate after the exit of Ashoka. Several causes seem to have brought about the decline of the fall of Mauryan Empire. So, what was that? First one is Brahminical reaction. The Brahminical reaction began as a result of policy of Ashoka. There is no doubt that Ashoka adopted a tolerant policy and asked the people to respect even the Brahmanas, but he prohibited killing of animals and birds and derided superfluous rituals performed by women. This naturally affected the income of Brahmanas. The anti sacrifice attitude of Buddhism and of Ashoka naturally brought much loss to the Brahmanas, who lived on the gift made to them in various kinds of sacrifices. Hence, in spite of the tolerant policy of Ashoka, the Brahmanas developed some kind of antipathy to him. Obviously, they were not satisfied with his tolerant policy. They really wanted a policy that would favor them and uphold the existing interest and privileges. Some of the new kingdoms which arose on the remains of the Mauryan Empire were ruled by Brahmanas, the Sanghas, the Kanvas. So after Mauryas, okay, they were Sungas and Kanvas. They were actually they were Brahmanas, okay, who ruled in Madhya Pradesh and further east in the remnants of the Mauryan Empire. They were Brahmanas. Similarly, the Satavahanas founded a lasting kingdom in the western Deccan and Andhra claimed to be Brahmanas. These Brahmana dynasties performed the Vedic sacrifices which were neglected by Ashoka. So, next is financial crisis. Enormous expenditure on the army and the payment of bureaucracy created a financial crisis in the Mauryan Empire. As far as we know, in ancient times, the Mauryans maintained the largest army and the strongest regiment of officers. Despite all kind of taxes and imposed on people, it was difficult to maintain this huge superstructure. It seems that Ashoka made large grants to the Buddhist monks, which left the royal treasury empty. In order to meet expenses in the last stage, they had to melt the images made of gold. Okay, now another aspect is we have discussed the Brahminical oppression or protest, then financial crisis. Now the third one is oppressive rule. Oppressive rule in the provinces was an important cause of the breakup of the empire. In the reign of Bindusara, the citizens of Taxila bitterly complained about the misrule of wicked bureaucrats, Dushyamatyas. Their grievance was redressed by the appointment of Ashoka. But when Ashoka became emperor, a similar complaint was lodged by the same city. The Kalinga edicts show that Ashoka felt very much concerned about the oppression in the provinces and therefore asked the Mahamantras not to torture townsmen without due cause. For this purpose, he introduced rotation of officers in Tosali, Ujjain, and Taxila. He himself spent 256 nights on pilgrimage tour, which may have helped administrative supervision, but also this failed to stop oppression in the outlying provinces. After his retirement, Taxila took the earliest opportunity to throw off the imperial yoke. Okay, they became independent. Spread of the new material knowledge in the outlying areas. We have seen how Magadha owned its expense to the great or certain basic material advantages. Once the knowledge of the use of these elements of the culture spread to central India, the Deccan and the Kalinga, as a result, the expansion of the Magadhan Empire, the Gangatic Basin, and which formed the heart of the empire, lost its special advantage, such as the regular use of iron tools and weapons in the peripheral provinces. Before iron tools, there was bronze tools, which was not strong as iron tools. So, once the Gangatic Basin began to spread this material knowledge to other areas, that is, they began to send the iron equipments to other areas, they also became stronger. Okay, other areas also became stronger. Okay, The regular use of iron tools and weapons in the peripheral provinces coincided with the decline and fall of Mauryan Empire. On the basis of the material culture acquired from Magadha, new kingdoms could be founded and developed. This explains the rise of Sungas and Kanvas in central India, of Chettis, where Chettis in Kalinga and the Satavahanas in the Deccan. Now, next one is neglect of northwest frontier and the Great Wall of China. Okay, we will now see after this chapter, we will be seeing the further invasions after the decline of Mauryan Empire. Since Ashoka was mostly preoccupied with missionary activities at home and abroad, he could not pay attention to the safeguarding of the passage on the northwestern frontier. This had become necessary in view of movement of tribes in Central Asia in the 3rd century BC. The Scythians were in a state of constant flux. The nomadic people, mainly relying on the use of horse, they posed serious dangers on the settled empires in China and India. Chinese ruler, what he did, Xingxiangsti, okay, constructed the Great Wall of China in 220 BC to shield his empire against the attacks of Scythians. Okay, no similar measures were taken by Ashoka. Naturally, when the Scythians made a push towards India, they forced the Parthians, Sagas, and Greeks to move towards India. The Greeks had set up a kingdom in North Afghanistan which was known as Bactria. They were the first to invade India in 206 BC. This was followed by a series of invasions which continued till the beginning of the Christian era. Mauryan Empire was finally destroyed by Pushyamitra Singha. Okay, this is a Sungha dynasty that is coming after Maurya. So Pushyamitra Singha, he was a Brahmana. He was a general of last Mauryan king, that is Brihadrata. Okay, he is said to have killed Brihadrata in public and forcefully usurped the throne of Patliputra. Sungas ruled in Patliputra and central India, and they performed several Vedic sacrifices like Ashwamedha. All these sacrifices were done by Sungas in order to assert their claim to the throne. Okay, that is also another aspect is in order to mark the revival of Brahminical way of life. It is said that they persecuted the Buddhists. They were succeeded by Kanvas, who were also Brahmanas. So that is for Mauryan Empire. We have seen the significance and the rise and the administrative structures. All these aspects were properly discussed in this chapter. I hope today's lesson was productive for you guys. Until we meet again next time, God bless you all. Jai Hind.